Time for this scaly son of a bitch to kick the bucket!
Thanks to Devolver Digital for providing me with an early access key to Shadow Warrior 3, I had the opportunity to play through the entire game over the past weekend. Before we get into the nitty-gritty review of things, I want to point out that I've never played any of the previous Shadow Warrior games. Turns out you really don't need to know much from the previous games, since they give you a minor summary in the beginning. Besides that, I had no idea what I was getting myself into when booting up the game for the first time, and while I will admit that the first 30 or so minutes really had me hooked, it didn't last as long as I would have hoped. If you're at all interested in the game, I will be live streaming Shadow Warrior 3 Early Access gameplay tonight, right here on my YouTube channel around 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Now let's get on with the review. In Shadow Warrior 3, you continue to play as Lo Wang, the main character from the previous Shadow Warrior games. As you watch cutscenes and listen to the dialogue, you will converse with Hoji and Zilla, who are also returning characters. The story goes like this. You embark on an improbable mission to recapture an ancient dragon they unwillingly unreleased from its eternal prison. Armed with a punishing mix of blades and bullets, Lo Wang must traverse uncharted parts of the world to track down the dark beast and push the apocalypse back yet again. All it will take is the mask of a dead god, a dragon's egg, a touch of magic, and enough firepower to hold off the impending cataclysm. Just like the older titles, the humor, wittiness, and crass is all still there, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
It's bigger than I remember. That's what she said.
The bulk of Shadow Warrior 3 consists of progressing through the story, completing challenges that allow you to upgrade your weapons and characters' abilities. Some challenges are as simple as killing 100 enemies with your Dragon Tail sword, or staggering 50 enemies with the Shuriken Spitter. In the beginning hour or so of the game, you'll start to find and unlock the rest of the weapons that the game has to offer, ranging from a revolver or a shotgun to a grenade launcher and dual SMGs. There's just enough to get the job done. Now, the world itself does have some beautiful vistas, and I did at times find myself stopping and take a look around. This is no blockbuster film, of course, but I did like the attention to detail that you could find throughout the levels and the overall blood and gore. It's a pretty game to say the least. One of the pluses this game has to offer are the hidden orbs that are located just barely out of sight and off the beaten linear path. Games that reward even a tiny bit of exploring, not that this game really has that though, is always a plus in my books. Something also really cool that I enjoyed is the new finisher moves. If you remember glory kills from Doom, then you'll feel right at home. It is basically the same thing, but it's freaking awesome. Not only do you get to kill every enemy this way except for bosses, you will also temporarily gain that enemy's ability or weapon, like a giant club, a samurai sword that locks on and allows you to lunge across the map, 2 Gatling guns, or a giant freeze bomb. Now unfortunately, there is only one finisher move per enemy and it never changes, so after doing it about a dozen times or less, it starts to get old since there is no variety with the animations. However, I still continue to do it as I progress my way through the story because it's an easy way to kill enemies and also getting their weapons, which are pretty OP. Combat overall feels good and tight, it's super fast paced, and the weapons you get do feel very impactful. I never felt that the enemies were too bullet spongy, which is a must to keep things light and fun in this type of shooter. Shadow Warrior 3 reminds me a lot of Blade Runner due to the movement in this game. You can double jump, dash, slide, and grapple along for very fast and versatile movements. Shadow Warrior 3 will have you traversing through levels with fast-paced parkour, which includes a lot of wall running. If I was to really compare this game to anything, it would be as if you're playing as Deadpool and Doom Guy in a more vibrant, oriental-themed Doom 2016.
The only thing you're opening today is a can of whoop-ass!
I feel Shadow Warrior 3 has been extremely condensed down and practically a Doom clone with a not as good soundtrack. Not to say that that is a bad thing, but based off what little research I did on Shadow Warriors 1 and 2, I'm not sure a lot of people will like this new direction number 3 went, or it's exactly the perfect way it is. I don't know. Based off the franchise's history, it doesn't seem to know what it wants to be and continues to change its formula game after game. I, for one, being a brand new player to the franchise, enjoyed it up until I realized how repetitive it got after only 3 to 4 hours of gameplay. There was also a good hour where I didn't feel like playing the game anymore since some of the level design got to be extremely dull, but luckily I was saved by a new enemy and boss encounter to spice things up again, but unfortunately quickly after that it went right back to the old rinse and repeat of parkouring to an arena and fighting the same enemies over and over again. Shadow Warrior 3 severely lacks in the amount of weapon variety, with only a total of 7 weapons, while Shadow Warrior 2 had a whopping 79 variants to choose from, at least that's what Google tells me. However, not to compare too much to the other games, the 7 weapons you do get seemed fine. Continuing on the trend of smaller amounts of content, there are only 9 story campaign levels versus the previous titles having somewhere around 13 story missions and 15 side missions. But the cherry on top, you cannot go back and play any previous missions. It's a one and done kind of thing. According to Google, the average or expected duration of Shadow Warrior 2 was anywhere from 10 to 15 hours. Unfortunately, that is not the case for Shadow Warrior 3. It took me only 5 hours to beat from start to finish. That is without skipping cutscenes and playing on medium difficulty, which is right in the middle since there is only easy, medium, or hard to choose from. That being said, I have technically not 100% of the game, as there are still some challenges left for me to complete, like kill 100 enemies with explosives or finish collecting all the orbs, which allowed me to level up my guns and characters' abilities. However, that would require me playing through the entire game again and carefully completing each and every challenge, which isn't something that I desire to do at this point. On top of the lack of content this game has to offer, I had some stuttering in the beginning, which seemed to be tied to having VSync on, which was by default, as well as playing in borderless window mode, which I typically do for most games. After switching to full screen and adjusting the aforementioned settings, the stuttering was practically gone. However, it definitely came and went between loading into new areas or jumping into a cutscene. Even sometimes cutscenes audio would crackle, and I don't know what that's all about. I had all the video settings cranked up, as well as NVIDIA DLSS turned on and set to balance. For reference, I have a 3700X CPU and a 3070 Ti graphics card with 32 gigs of RAM. Keep in mind for those on PC that Shadow Warrior 3 recommends a GTX 1080 or Radeon 5700. Be that as it may, please check out other reviews to see if they had any issues, because it's always possible that something went wrong on my end. Unless you are a die-hard Shadow Warrior fan, I do not recommend buying Shadow Warrior 3 at full price, and instead recommend waiting on sale whenever that may be. Now, if you are on PlayStation, then you are in luck, as it will be available on PlayStation Now at launch, at which point I'd say it's worth a download. Shadow Warrior 3 will also be available on PC through Steam and Xbox One for $49.99 US. Overall, keep an eye on this one, as it is a ton of fun, and I don't think you'll regret purchasing it when it goes on sale.
You really f***ed up, didn't you, man? And now look at you.
I am the thunder and the lightning.